let's get started. Hey, good evening. We'll try it again. I say good evening, you say good evening. Good evening. Hey, I'm David Dendy. I get to be the pastor here at Mountain View Presbyterian Church, and thank you for coming out tonight on just a really important night. And I was trying to think, what do I say at the beginning of a meeting like this? And my heart is just saying, it's so sad that we have to meet about something like this, that we even have to gather to have a panel. We even have to have a panel about this. We have to have people who are in charge of this in our Metro Police, that we have judges who have to deal with cases like what we're going to be talking about tonight. It breaks my heart. And so thank you for coming out and showing your interest, that you have a heart for our young people in our community and in our world who get taken advantage of, who get trafficked, who get sold, who get abused, who get tortured, who get all those things. And my childhood wasn't like that. And yet there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of kids that this is their life. And we have an opportunity to help them out. So thanks for coming out. And before I turn over to Michael, I'm just going to pray, because I'm the pastor here and I can do that. So let's just pray. Our gracious God, we come before you knowing that there's strength in numbers, that we have concerned hearts, loving hearts, compassionate hearts gathered in this place who want to help out on a situation that's just, it's dire and it's tragic. And yet there's still hope for young people, young girls, young boys, to help them break a cycle, help them to rescue them, help them to get out of something that they had no intention of getting in to begin with. And so thank you for our panelists. Thank you for Rotary Club International for coming here, for sponsoring this. Thank you for just being a God who watches over all of us and who loves us and cares for us. For it's in your name that we pray. Amen. And now I'd like to turn it over to our Rotary Club president, Michael Turner.
Thank you, and good evening, and welcome to the Child Sex Trafficking, Are Your Kids at Risk? Grassroots Forum that is sponsored by the Las Vegas Summerlin Rotary Club. Our club has served the community for 25 years now, and we conduct humanitarian projects, many of them focused on at-risk youth. Rotary is an international organization of 1.2 million members spread across 160 countries. 15 months ago, the club established the Child Sex Trafficking Committee, which is comprised of 17 Rotarians and 4 community members. I do want to especially thank Lynn Green. She is the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department manager of the Victim Services and Human Trafficking Division, for her unwavering support and counsel in putting this project together. The purpose of the forum is to educate the public about child sex trafficking in southern Nevada, and to launch a grassroots community movement to further educate people in our community. Why? According to the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, the proportion of sex trafficking victims in Nevada is higher than the national average. According to an August 26, 2021 Washington Post article, at least 290 minors were arrested for prostitution-related offenses in 2019. The state that arrested the most, 110, was Nevada. So we need to realize that most of the children who are trafficked are not brought into the community. They live in our neighborhoods. And they can be from North Las Vegas, Summerlin, Bonanza, Henderson, Spring Valley, wherever our community stretches to. And it's a serious crime. Children are often repeatedly violated, and of course they're vulnerable to abuse and exploitation, and they also suffer from tremendous emotional trauma, and much of this lasts a lifetime. So tonight's panelists will be offering information to educate you about the extent of child sex trafficking in southern Nevada and what law enforcement, the judicial system, and social service agencies are doing to assist the victims. When you came into the auditorium tonight, you were handed a note card for questions. Please write them down, and they will be passed up to me. And at the end of the panel discussion, we will have them address the questions. Our first panelist tonight is Lieutenant William Machko. He is in charge of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Vice and Sex Trafficking Investigations Section. And that section investigates all prostitution and pandering related crimes, including sex and human trafficking. His detectives work with the tourist corridors as well as problems throughout the valley. His section also partners with the FBI as part of the Innocence Lost National Initiative, which addresses the growing problem of domestic sex trafficking of children in the United States. After graduating high school in Las Vegas, Lieutenant Machko joined the U.S. Army, rose to the rank of sergeant. He supported Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He joined the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department in 2005. He served as a field training officer and gang detective. Upon promotion to sergeant, he became the supervisor of the Southern Nevada Human Trafficking Task Force in partnership with the FBI. When he was promoted to lieutenant, he was elevated to his current position. Lieutenant Machko has been the recipient of the Crisis Intervention Team Officer of the Year, the LVMPD Life-Saving Award, and the Medal of Honor for his actions on 1 October. Lieutenant Machko.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate everyone else that's here tonight. On the board up there, I have my contact information, and if anybody does have any questions after this forum and you want to reach out to me, my email's up there. It's w8525m@lvmp.com. If you want to contact our section, there's a normal Vice email up there, and then also there's the phone numbers up there. So if you do have something that you want to follow up after tonight, I'll be happy to get back to you and respond from email. Go ahead on to the next slide. So I guess being on the panel here today, the first thing we'll talk about is what is sex trafficking for anyone that's unaware. And simply put, sex trafficking is modern day slavery, and it's where people profit from the control and exploitation of others. In illegal and understandable terms, it's when a person is induced by force, fraud, or coercion to engage in commercial sex act, become or remain in the occupation of prostitution. However, if the person is induced to perform a commercial sex act or remain as a prostitute under the age of 18 years old, force or fraud and coercion are not necessary. Children who are exploited into the commercial sex trade are viewed as victims by law and by practice by police officers. Go on to the next slide. So I guess the question that we have here today, being on the panel, is how can I, as a citizen, as a community member here in Las Vegas, make an impact in human trafficking? Go ahead. So to me, when people ask me that, the first thing I say is change begins in your home. And what I mean by the change happening in your home is, do you allow the glamorization of the criminal culture, of this criminal culture in your life? And a lot of people would say, well, what does that mean? And the thing is a lot of TV shows that we watch, a lot of the music that people listen to, they glamorize the pimp and prostitute subculture, and they make it seem like it's the cool thing. It's like it's an exciting thing. It's a glamorous lifestyle that people are living. However, in reality, it couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, it's someone being enslaved. This is children in our community being forced to work as prostitutes on Las Vegas Boulevard or on Tropicana or anywhere else all over the internet, and there's nothing glamorous or exciting about that. It's a terrible, terrible thing. It's an underbelly in our society, and it's something that we as a community should not accept. The music, which idolizes the pimps and vilifies trafficking victims, is another problem. And while maybe folks that are in the audience today aren't listening to that type of music, the question is are you allowing your children to listen to that music? Are you allowing your grandchildren and are your neighbors listening to that music? And are they trying to emulate what these folks are saying in that music and on these movies and TV shows? And if they are they of the age that they understand the difference between what is on TV and what's on music and what reality is? Because many of our children don't understand that. And they think that what they see on the internet or on Facebook or on Instagram is reality of life. And unfortunately, teenagers and young children don't understand that these are dangerous situations that they're looking at, and it's not the reality of life. When you go out as a police officer, you see what the reality is, and it's disgusting. It breaks our hearts, and it's sad that as during the introduction, Las Vegas makes more arrests every year for juvenile sex trafficking victims than most places across the country. And that's the concern. This is not some plague or some issue that's just happening overseas or in a far-off land. It's happening within walking distance from where we are today in this church. If you drive down Tropicana between Decatur and the I-15, most times of the day, you'll see men and women walking up and down the street, wandering. And if you're wondering what they're doing, I can assure you many of them are out there working in the prostitution industry. And there's children out there that are being forced to work out there. And that's where our vice detectives go out there every day and night and try to pick them up and get to the services that we're going to talk about here today. That's the point. That's the goal of what the police department is trying to do. We're trying to get these kids off the streets and into services so they have a chance at life. They don't all take that chance. A lot of them we pick up repeatedly, but at least we get them a chance to get to see the advocates, to go see Judge Voy and get put into services where they have a chance at recovery. And lastly on this slide is, do your children follow or support social media influencers or celebrities who are portraying the pimp lifestyle? If you're supporting them and you're watching them, then that means they're getting paid. That means they're profiting off of likes, and they're profiting off of being popular on the internet, and they're gaining notoriety for victimizing our children, and that's something we can't stand for. Can you hit the next slide, please? My next thing I get to real quick is your vote is your voice. And after we fix our homes, we go into voting, right? And unfortunately, not every judge is like Judge Voy and cares about what's happening in this system. It gets very frustrating as a police officer to know that I arrest someone who is victimizing children. We arrest them, we have all the evidence in the world, and they're released out on the street the next day to re-victimize those children again. And I know that when I vote, and I'm asking when you vote, is just to educate yourself. Educate yourself on who you're voting for and what their stance is on these laws and how they're treating these people that are being arrested. Along that line, are you on candidates, when you're voting for other politicians, what are their stances for those situations? How do they feel about trafficking? What do they know about trafficking? Because the term that gets thrown around a lot in the legislature is meaningful legislation. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that want to just pass a law so that they could say they passed a law, but they don't understand that there are unintended consequences to some of those laws. And while they may seem like a great idea on the surface, they cause unintended consequences that actually hurt the victims of sex trafficking and of human trafficking. And it's not your fault as a community member if you're not aware of what those are, but you should be responsible enough to go find someone that works in the field or contact a police officer, contact an advocate, contact someone that's educated and experienced and see what they have to say about it. We'll hit the next slide. If you do have the time or the resources to volunteer, we have all kinds of opportunities to volunteer. And yes, some of us can't go out in the middle of the night to respond to a trafficking victim, but there are other ways to volunteer, and we'll be able to give some of that out. But we do have volunteers that wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm thankful for them every day, and they'll respond out to where the police officers may have a trafficking victim that needs help, and They're wonderful members of our community, but we can't all do that. We might not have the transportation. We might not have the means to do that. But everyone in this room, everyone that sees this panel has a talent, or they may have the time, or they have some skill that they can help out with to make the community a better place and to fight trafficking. Next slide. And once again, this is just my contact information, and I will pass it off to Judge Voy, I believe.
For sexually exploited youth. In 2005, Judge Voy established the nation's first specialty court for sexually exploited youth. In addition, he implemented the state's first juvenile diversion court and mental health court, as well as oversaw the implementation of the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative that reduced average daily detention population by 50%. As a result, Judge Voy developed the first probation 24/7 intensive supervision unit in the country. Judge Voy has continued to lead the way in the establishment of substantial reforms to the juvenile justice system in Clark County, and many of these changes have become best practices for juvenile justice across the country. Judge Voy received his law degree from Willamette University College of Law. After graduating, he served as a captain in the U.S. Army JAG Corps and was stationed at Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, D.C. Judge Voy was appointed to the bench in 1998 and has subsequently been reelected. Judge Voy.
Thank you. Good evening. How you doing? It's fitting that we should be in a house of worship for this panel. The reason why is that the faith-based community has been one of our strongest advocates for this population of kids. Let me just take a moment. It's hard for me to narrow the focus of my few minutes of conversation that we can have here today. I could probably spend 10, 15 hours straight on this topic. As was stated, 2005, I was the juvenile court judge beginning in 2004. Delinquency court judge here in Clark County. That's when I started. It took me a year to get my bearings, figure out what we had. There was one element, case type, that was really bothering me. And it was a case type that was kind of low level as far as they were misdemeanor type cases. I mean, we call them delinquent acts, but if it was a crime, it'd be a misdemeanor. Solicitation, misdemeanor, right? And so those cases would find their way into the couple of the hearing masters that worked below the judge. And I would always have these detention hearings coming in front of me where the public defender would say, hey, listen, this child has been picked up for solicitation. It's a misdemeanor. We're reforming our juvenile justice system as we speak. In these conversations in 2005 when we were trying to figure this out. And they said that, we shouldn't be detaining this child. And I'm going, that's a good point. Then the DA would stand up and go, Judge, however, this child has run away from home. Parent has lost total control of this child. The pimp has got this child in their grasp. And if we release this child, they're going to go right back to the streets to the pimp and be re-victimized. That's a good point. So the worst thing for a judge to do is when both sides have good points and no easy solution, all right? And they look for you for the solution. Well, we, as a team, Metro, my public defender, our DA, we all got together and finally said in 2005 that we're going to try and do something different with this population. And the very first thing that we asked ourselves as a group, are we dealing with victims? And of course we are. We all agreed. And from that premise, we worked forward. Shortly, so then we developed the calendar where they would all come to my courtroom. I would hear the case from the beginning to the end, bypass the hearing master system. And it became real clear to us that we needed different tools. Again, one of the points that needs to be made here is the kids that are involved in this get involved through different doors. And they're kids. They're not widgets, as we say in the legal world. They're not. You can't treat them like that. They all come in different ways, have different issues that need to be dealt with. And then you've got, on top of that, you have these kids that still think that they're not being victimized, that this pimp is the boyfriend, the whole 9 yards. They come in all different, they cross a spectrum this long. And they fall within that spectrum. And so you have to look at your available tools and how do you deal with these children and to keep them safe and extract them from that vicious world that they're in. Some don't want to be at that point in time. And again, we're dealing with kids, all right? We don't let them smoke, drink, vote, drive vehicles, all kinds of other things, right? Because it's not quite working up here yet, right? Well, the same thing here. So we've discovered after working about 1.5 years with this population that a good about 70% of the kids that were brought to us didn't see us as safety, the system. All right, a lot of them have the trauma. You talk to psychologists and they'll tell you the trauma. Especially with kids, they're going to look for safety and want control of their own life. Well, when they come into the system, a system that unfortunately, at the time, we have to work with the tools we had. They come into detention, for example. First of all, they don't want to be there. They want to be back wherever they were. They don't see us as offering safety, and they want control of their own life. But when they come into the system, we take control of their life away from them. It's just like a kid that robs someone. We place them in a juvenile system. We order them to do things. We're taking their self-control away from them, right? In that respect. So it creates a very difficult dynamic to work with a lot of these kids. And so we came out with this idea that, listen, after the majority of these kids running from us, we'd place them in group homes, place them back at home, wherever. They would run and back to the streets, back to the pimps, maybe a different pimp this time, whatever. And they would come, and we said, what can we do? We need to do something different. And again, we were in Las Vegas, and I like to say, because you talk about the numbers here in Las Vegas, there's a reason why our numbers are high. Nationally, there's several reasons. One, first of all, it's an urban center, and there's tourism. Any community throughout the United States and other countries that have urban center and tourism, this exists. However, what I noticed and learned early on was Metro had an approach for many years prior to us starting to do what we did in 2005. And they were trying to identify these children, get them into protective custody, and then try and do something with them. We used Children of the Night in LA, which was one of the first programs, still exists, it's a good program. But there was very few resources for these kids and very few placement resources because a lot of these kids need to be placed somewhere else. Home wasn't the answer for a lot of the kids we deal with, at least not initially. And so we came up with this idea we needed a safe house, not a detention center. We didn't want them in detention. We wanted to put them in a staff-secure therapeutic setting to start working with them, identifying what the issues are, assess their needs. Some could stay maybe a day or two and return home. Some may need to stay there for a couple months. Some might even have to stay for a few months because they're on what we call material witness hold, where they're trying to prosecute the pimp, but you've got to have a witness, you have to have a victim. And if you can't guarantee that that victim witness is going to be available for that prosecution, you're going to have to do something else from a prosecutorial standpoint and choose which cases you can take to trial, which ones you're going to be able to win, which ones you can offer a sweetheart deal to the defendant, because if it goes to trial, there's a good chance the state's going to lose it because the victim is not going to be there to testify. So there's all kinds of issues that this population highlights in the justice system, both at the adult level and in the juvenile level. And so we came up with the idea of the safe house. That was in 2006. Architectural drawings, plans. There's an outfit called Shared Hope International that's done great work throughout the world in this area, and here in North America also. They saw our idea. They said, let's replicate that and get that done. It hasn't been done. We, in the system, want a therapeutic environment for these kids. We have not, that is staff secure for those percentage of kids that don't want to stay there where we work with them. And so for years, we've been trying to get the public, our politicians, executive branch folks, help fund it. It hasn't happened. and we've struggled. The Safe Harbor is an initiative that started about in 2009. And it's been replicated in California, New York, other states across the union. They pick the child up, take the child to a group home, not staff secure, and say, stay here, we're going to treat you like a victim, we're going to help you. The majority of those kids leave. I want to try to protect as many kids as possible. I think we all want to do that, right? So the answer to that was this idea of this staff secure, because you can't hold a kid against their will under two conditions. One, the juvenile justice system can, or mental health. But unfortunately, a lot of the kids that we deal with, their mental health issues don't clinically rise to that level that need to be in a staff secure facility. So we would release them into a non-secure type environment, staff secure, and again, lose these kids back to the streets. Some killed. I still have files on my desk of the kids that were in our system briefly and are no longer with us because we didn't have that other option. California, New York, failure. They're failing these kids because I see them. One of the reasons why we get so many kids coming through here is that we're diverting a lot more than we ever used to into other resources, like what is going to be talked about here in a few minutes. These kids come from other states, so there's a warrant easily issued for their arrest because they violated something or ran from a group home or something there. So there's a warrant from California or some other state, North Dakota. I've heard a few of those lately, for example. We have to hold them in secure detention. I'm required to do that until we can arrange to have that child taken back to their home state. So we do get a lot more arrests because there's outstanding warrants from other states with these kids. I'm sorry, my allergies are acting up here. 1 second. And so there's a lot of reasons why our numbers are what they are. The other thing is our community has developed an awareness that other communities still haven't. And as we're aware of it, we're looking for it. We want to get these kids off the streets and get them from the pimps. And so that would also contribute. I guarantee you, you go to an urban center with any kind of tourism, and they say, oh, we don't have a problem. They're just not looking. When I first started this, I'd approach my colleagues in other states and other jurisdictions. I say, what do you do with this population? Because we're not, we don't know. We're trying to figure it out. They go, oh, we just do catch and release. They're too difficult. We just do catch and release. This is how we treat our kids? What does that tell us about our society when that's the attitude of those folks? Now, fortunately, that's changed. It still exists out there. I've still run across it from time to time. So, fast forward to 2021. Finally, SB 274, this last session, it created the statutory mechanism for what we call the receiving centers. And it's the closest thing to the safe house design that we came up with back in 2006 and 7. It's there. It's on the books. It wasn't funded. It was not funded. So there's a lot of things that folks can do out there to help this cause. But one thing is for certain. We need those reception centers. I call them reception centers, receiving centers, same thing. It's staff secure. All right, and allows us to hold these kids long enough to maybe even start breaking down some of the barriers that causes them to not see us as an answer, as safety, and start getting them separated from the pimp and the other issues that they have, and start addressing drug and alcohol issues, whatever the other mental health issues. Again, these kids come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes and issues. Not one size fits all. You need a tool belt for each kid, and each kid you need to pull out a different tool. But we've got to have that done. Otherwise, we're going to be just hitting the surface and never digging down into those numbers of kids out there that become those statistics. And then when they turn 18 in the adult system, in and out of municipal courts and outside of the jails, and life is is what it is. So if there's anything that I can point to today as being something that the community can get behind, is getting the political will of this community, and faith-based is very strong. They have a very strong will. When there's a will, there's a way. And so my suggestion out there is, if you know an executive branch person, because the judges don't control the money, right? We have to go begging the legislature for funding, the county, whatever, right? The executive branch does, whether that's the county, the state, municipalities. These centers can be funded. It's there waiting to go. So that would be my big suggestion, because as a judge, I have to use the right words here. Suggestion that might be a way for folks to really, really make a difference. As my late mother used to say, and it wasn't that long ago, you put your money where your mouth is. And if you're not willing to do that, then it's all this. And that's what we've been encountering for many, many years. Not just here in unfortunately, just not here in Nevada, but other states too. It's the same problem. So with that being said, I don't want to waste any more time. Like I said, I could talk for hours on this, but I'll turn it over to, I think, Christina, maybe.
Thank you very much, Judge Voigt. One of the things to add a little context, the judge and lieutenant here were talking about kids. Think of this. Kids that are trafficked start around 9 or 10 years old. Think about that. What were you doing when you were 9 or 10 years old? And those are the type of kids that these consumers or Johns, whatever you call them, are looking for. They want the younger the better, they feel. And so think about that. Not only maybe grandkids you might have, children you might have, neighbors' kids, families that have children. That's where these children are starting and getting involved in this activity. We just had a look at the extent of the issue. We're going to take a look now at what are some of the services that are available to help the children who become victims and are looking for a way to either get out or support that will allow them to change their lives for the better. Kathleen Call, or Kat as she likes to be called, is director of HUB, which is affiliated with Hope Church. And the church and HUB rescues children from toxic physical situations, life-controlling circumstances. Maybe they're involved in danger or unhealthy environment, or subject to abuse and exploitation. The Hub provides access to vital relationships that directly impacts a child's identity, self-esteem, emotional health, and future. Recovery from trauma and exploitation offers children the opportunity to improve their life and to become self-sufficient. Kathleen has a bachelor's degree in social work from UNLV. She chose this field because she wanted to get involved in the fight against human trafficking. Kat truly believes there's a way for everyone to get involved, and that starts with education. Kat?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the intro. So, first of all, I was laughing that I was on this panel because I'm up here with literally a lieutenant and a doctor and a judge, and then there's me. But I think that, and Lieutenant Machko said it himself, there is a role that everyone can play, and everyone does have a part to play. And especially for young survivors of trafficking, children in general, we hear it takes a village to raise a child. But oftentimes the children who are in a trafficking situation do not have a village. That can be you. And it should be you, because you're hearing today about this problem, and you're going to be faced with a decision later when you leave this place. First of all, thank you for already coming, because the fact that you're here shows that you want to learn more and stand in the gap for vulnerable populations here in Las Vegas. But you do have a choice after leaving here today. Once you know, you can either keep going with your life or you can step in to make a difference. So I'm fairly young. I just turned 26. And the Hub Las Vegas, we just launched it this February, but Purchase Not for Sale is a ministry of the Hub Las Vegas. And Purchased serves those who have been sexually exploited and sex trafficked, primarily through an outpatient teen recovery program for girls 12 to 17 who have either been identified as having been trafficked or are highest risk for being trafficked. And I do want to emphasize that while our program is specifically for teen girls, there are also young male survivors and victims here in our community. That's not rare either. We just started with teen girls. That's where we felt like God was telling us, and also we just saw that there weren't enough resources for teens out there. And so our program specifically, it's a trauma-informed and biblically based program, meaning we love Jesus, but also we understand that God made the brain a certain way. And if you really want to stand with a survivor and just help clear the path so they can truly walk a path of recovery, you need to understand how trauma affects the brain and the body and how it changes a person. Because when you have a trauma-informed program, it means that you understand what that child has been through to some extent, and it means you'll understand their behaviors. And I think that's super important because these kids, first of all, the girls in our program, they're hilarious, and they're witty, and they're funny. They're genuinely some of the funniest people I've ever met. And so often they've been pointed at as the bad kid in class, when really they've been through a substantial amount of trauma. And if you sit down and talk to them, they're kids. And so our program, it's kind of like a tiny, weird school. We're like a family. We're super tight-knit. And we pick up the girls every morning, Monday through Thursday, in our van. So we drive all over the city, pick them up, take them to our program space. The girls, they participate in online education in partnership with Lake Mead Christian Academy. They receive recovery classes that focus on topics like boundaries, safe relationships, Trauma 101. Some of those are taught by volunteers and others are taught by licensed professionals. We partner with FACT, which is a Family and Child Treatment Center, and they're incredible. They teach a group therapy class for us. The girls, they work out at the gym sometimes, which is hilarious. They don't love that part. They also each have a mentor. They get to therapy every week. There's just so much that we do, but really the main thing is relationship building. There have been so many times where someone on our team has been the emergency contact for one of these girls. Or instead of calling the police, which they should have called the police, and we told them that later, they call us, because they've come to know us and they view us as safe because we've been there with them through thick and thin. And that's not just staff, it's volunteers too. It's people from the church who would have never seen themselves stepping into this field that are there for just one, but they've made all the difference for that one. And these girls, they really are, I'm not just saying this, they are the bravest girls I've ever met in my life. And so I think that's something that you'll experience too if you decide to walk alongside a survivor. You are quickly going to realize you're going to learn just as much, if not more, from them than they will learn from you, because they've seen some of the hardest things in life and yet they're still fighting, which is really incredible. And actually, the first girl to ever join our teen program was from Summerlin. So it does happen more in certain parts of town, yes, 1,000%. There are certain higher risk groups here in Vegas and just all over the place. But it can happen anywhere, and it can happen to anyone if you are not educated and you don't know the warning signs and how to understand how the grooming process works. And so much, especially because of this pandemic, but even way before that, has been happening online. And so there was an 11-year-old through the Department of Family Services who was identified as having been trafficked off of Pinterest, the app, which is ridiculous that should even be possible. And so the goal of Purchase Not for Sale is, like I said, we're a Christian organization, and people sometimes question the name, but I believe that I was bought with a price, Jesus' blood, like he died for me, and therefore I have infinite worth and value. And that's the same for every person on this earth. That's what we believe for these girls. And so we don't view ourselves as the rescuers in any way, shape, or form. That's not our job. Our job is to clear the path so that they can climb out of the situation that they're in and keep going. And I mean, you've heard from Judge Voy, you know, he's seen all kinds of things in his courtroom. And it's so funny because we have girls in our program who will say, yeah, I was in court and I didn't like what he said. But they also really do love Judge Voy, which is honestly really great because it's not common for kiddos to go through court and say, like, I do feel like the judge was advocating for me. So we do have some really incredible people in this community, and Purchase Not for Sale isn't the only one. And maybe you're not supposed to do this as a director, but I think that this field is really good at working together, and there's some incredible other organizations in town. Another one that works with kids is the Embracing Project, and they do some incredible work. And there's a lot of other Christian organizations too, like Ruby's LV. There's Refuge for Women, there's Scarlet Hope, there's RISE through Rape Crisis Center. There's all kinds of places where you can get involved to work with survivors, and that can look like doing what Lieutenant Machko does, and it can also look like coming in for 2 hours a week and tutoring a girl in math because she's 3 years behind in school because she ran away when she was 12 and looks like she's not going to graduate, but she really, really wants to. That's how you can, I think, make a difference as well. It's not only your vote is super important, your finances are super important because, like we've been hearing, there isn't enough resources in this city, but also your time. Everyone can play a part. I mean it. We even found a way to get dads involved because we serve teen girls, so there weren't as many ways to plug in men, but there was not one teen girl who has come through our program who has actively had their biological father playing a role in their life. So we launched the Dad Crew, which is a team of dads that come in not to be their dad, they know their role, but to be an example of just a healthy male figure. And they just bring food and they hang out with the girls, and that's it. But that begins to rewire the brain, and that begins to change how you process people and how you distinguish safe versus unsafe. And that means that these girls are beginning to heal from their trauma. So I have a degree in social work, but honestly, I've learned the most in the field. And that has been the greatest blessing ever. It's changed my life. Like, I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't doing this. These girls are honestly just some of my favorite people ever. And so I'm grateful to be a part of it, but that can go for all of you too. So I just want to encourage you guys here today. First of all, you're already advocating for the vulnerable by being here tonight. Like, you took time out of your day to come here to hear people speak about this. That's a big deal. So just know we're grateful for you too, and I'm grateful to be here. But I'll go ahead and pass it to Dr. Christina.
Thank you, Kat. How many do you post on the internet? On social media pages? How many of you post pictures? Yeah. Yeah. How many of you post pictures of your grandchildren or your children, underage children, I should say? That can be very dangerous because, again, you have the Johns are trolling the internet, and they see a picture of a child, and they start thinking that that might be someone they might go after. And the Johns are sophisticated. They know how to use the internet to locate people. The other thing is that also I've seen some pictures of young children where someone will say, oh, he looks cute, or she looks beautiful. How old is she? Well, you don't know who's responding when you say she's 12 or 15 or whatever it is. And so we have to be careful what we do as adults, but at the same time, as parents, you have to be also very careful to monitor what your children are posting on whether it's Instagram, whatever they use, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. You need to also monitor what type of pictures they're posting, that they're not maybe pictures that might be overly suggestive or even just facial shots of themselves. because that is what the consumers are looking for. And they troll these sites, and that's one of the ways that they attract victims and hook them in, is by looking at the different apps and that we have that are available. And as the judge said, these children are immature. They have no idea that they could get themselves in very dangerous situation. And so we have to be their advocates. We have to be sure that they are not putting themselves in danger accidentally in their thinking, and not our thinking. Okay. We're going to turn now to Dr. Christina Vela. She is the CEO of St. Jude's Ranch for Children. The rancher's vision is to break the cycle of abuse and neglect by mending spirits and renewing hope. For over 54 years, St. Jude has provided a safe, nurturing home with therapeutic residential treatment services to thousands of abused and neglected children in Nevada. St. Jude's Ranch for Children has made and continues to make a difference by creating new lives with new hope for these children. Just as a side note, St. Jude's here is not affiliated with the St. Jude's Hospital we hear about in Tennessee. Yeah. Christina holds a doctorate in public policy and a master's degree in public administration from UNLV. She has more than 2 decades of experience in human and social services that includes developing and administrating foster care, homeless, and supportive services to children, youth, transition-age youth, and their families. Christina was recognized in 2020 with the NABO Women of Distinction Award and the Vistage Member Excellence Impact Award, and in 2018 with the Vegas Inc.'s Women to Watch Coveted Award. Dr. Christina Vela.
Hi everybody. It's always hard to hear your bio. It's like, just move along. Yeah. Just Christina. I'm really honored to be here with you all, and sitting up here with these incredible human beings that are doing great work is one of my privileges, and it's an honor for me. And then getting to go last is I get to sort of fill in the gaps, right? I sort of had a bunch of different things that I want to talk about, and like Judge Voy, I feel like I could talk about this topic for hours and hours because I get very passionate about it. But a couple things that I want to share. Number one is when you came in or before you leave, I created a little handout. It's a double-sided document. One gives a list of all of the programs that we host at St. Jude's Ranch for Children. Now we just celebrated our 55th year of serving child abuse and neglect victims here in Southern Nevada. And thank you for the clarification that no, we are not connected to St. Jude, the research hospital. But on the back side, I just put together some tips on ways you can help children. And I'm going to run through them quickly and then give you a little bit of information about our newest project. So I'm not going to read all of this word for word because I've got limited amount of time. But a couple things that I would encourage you, much like Michael said, we all have children in our lives. Whether it's your children, your grandchildren, your best friend's children, your nieces and nephews, your neighbors, your church children, everywhere, across this community, we are all impacted because of children. And it is so cliche, but they are indeed our future, and we must protect them. And, the data that was shared today about the number of trafficking victims, I sort of hate to disagree with my colleagues here on the right and left, but I would say that the number of kids that have come to the attention of the court and of Metro is the tip of the iceberg. There are thousands and thousands of children that are impacted by sex trafficking every single day in our community. This is happening to our children in our neighborhood and to probably kids that you didn't even realize that they were falling prey to this. So first of all, is set a high standard for love in your home. When we can teach children what love really looks like, that will help shape a child's self-image and their expectations of relationships in the world. So super important. Talk to your children about sexual abuse. Unfortunately, we see patterns of child sex trafficking victims being sold was not the first way they were ever abused. Quite honestly, they were abused for as young as they could remember, and their body in their mind has never been their property. So if you were sexually abused at age 2, and then at 5, and then you were physically abused at 7, and then you ended up in foster care, and then you've been in 5 different homes, your body and your life has never been yours. And so we have to be honest about, and these are, tough conversations to have, but we have to be honest about those pathways that sort of begin this trajectory of being victimized. So sexual abuse is unfortunately a really underlying issue with so many trafficking victims. Talk to your kids about sex trafficking. They need to know it's happening. The pimp culture is real. If you listen close enough to a lot of songs, the pimp culture is real. And I really appreciate what the lieutenant said. We cannot allow our kids to, to really glorify this. I remember a couple years ago, I'm a mom, and a song was on, and my son at that time, I think he was 12 or 13, I don't know, he said pimpin' is something. And I remember turning down the radio and saying, first of all, wow, I didn't even catch that was on. And second of all, son, do you know actually what they're talking about? He's like, yeah, pimpin' your ride. I'm no, honey, let's talk about what that really means. And it was whoa, he didn't even know, right? He didn't even know. So we've got to be real about what is happening. We need to talk to kids about the dangers of social media. And I have a couple things on here. Number 4, I hope you'll take one of these home and read it for yourself. Pay attention to your children. I know that seems pretty not that controversial, but for a lot of people, we're busy. Adults are busy. We've got jobs and bills and debt and family and life and all different challenges. But when we fail to pay attention to our children, things start happening. And if we're not paying attention, we might be missing those red flags. Get your children involved in the community. Having kids help other kids is a really powerful antidote to this kind of lifestyle, right? So whether through your church or your community group, finding something that your children are passionate about to fill their time is super important. But what I'm here to really talk to you about are kids most at risk. So all kids are at risk, yes, but there are certain populations in this community that are at heightened risk. And those are kids that are all victims of child abuse and neglect. It is that pathway. It is when a child, as I mentioned, at sexual abuse doesn't realize that their body actually belongs to them, or that physical abuse is not something that should be happening on a regular basis. It sets them up for thinking that relationships that are abusive are natural or normal or just the way it is. As mentioned, St. Jude's Ranch for Children has been serving child victims of abuse and neglect for 55 years, and we see it. We've seen it time and time again, that by the time a child has been trafficked, they can talk about years of abuse and neglect before they ever got trafficked. So I want to just, real quick for time, I want to actually give you a story of what does trafficking look like. I think we've described some of how we get involved and, on the strip, or they show up at in the courtroom. But here's a story, and I'm going to use a generalization just to make it easy for us. So we have a 15-year-old girl, and she spends a lot of time on social media, and she feels pretty alone in the world. It could be one of 2 reasons. I'm going to give you 2 pathways. One is she's been in foster care for a long, long time. She's lost touch with her siblings. She doesn't know where her mom is. Her dad's in prison. And she feels pretty alone in the world. Or a girl who is 15, comes from an affluent family, whose mom and dad have great jobs and spend a lot of time traveling to their jobs or on trips and are not really available. So that 15-year-old's pretty vulnerable, okay? Whichever pathway you want to go. Social media, she posts pretty pictures of herself and says, oh, I'm so lonely, or I don't have a lot of friends. And yes, somebody is trolling those pages, and if they're open to the community, right, they're not like locked, or I can't think of the word. Private, yes. If they're not set to private, anybody can see those things. And so a DM comes in. Anybody know what a DM is, right? That direct message, that unsolicited message that we all get from people trying to sell us things or whatnot. But a DM might slide in and say, "You're so beautiful." And if you're a broken-hearted kid who doesn't feel seen in the world, it's all about kindness and love. And, the young person doesn't know that the person's intention on the other end of that phone or the computer is not pure. And it's not that it's a 15-year-old boy experiencing loneliness also. And next thing you know, they're meeting up at the mall. And then he's kind to her and says, "Wow, when's the last time you've been shopping?" And she's like, "Oh, I haven't been shopping." And he takes her shopping. And then he takes her to lunch, and then they talk about trips to Hawaii. I mean, the grooming process can happen for months. Then he takes her out to buy a pretty dress, and he says, "We're going to go to my friend's party tonight." And she says, "Okay," and he's picked her up from her home, so he knows where she lives, and he knows that she has a little sister, and that her grandma lives down the block, right? So now he knows things about her. He picks her up. She looks beautiful. He makes her feel beautiful. She's in a fancy dress. She got her nails done. She's going to a party. They show up to the party anywhere, any house, a hotel, whatever. He tells her, "You love me, right?" "Well, yeah, I do love you. And we do all these nice things together, right?" "Yes." "And we're going to go to Hawaii soon, right?" "Yes." "And so we're going to go into this party and we're going to have fun, okay?" "Okay." I mean, she doesn't know what she's walking into. She walks into a room that she thinks she's going to a party, and the truth is she doesn't realize she is the party. She is the party. She's in the middle of a sexual assault situation, right? This is a hidden form of violence. She's being assaulted, she's being raped, and yes, she is being sold. She didn't even know it was happening till she was right in the middle of it. And what's the likelihood that in the middle of it, she can put her clothes on and say, no, this isn't what I signed up for, and leave? The likelihood of that happening is very low. And then trauma, right? Then she's like, is this really happening? Did I miss something? Is this my fault? Did I wear that dress? Wait, did I miss something? They get in the car, they leave, and she doesn't even realize, she's trying to process. She was just raped, right? And we do live in a culture that oftentimes will shame victims. That's a harsh reality, right? We know that rape victims have been asked from time to time, "Well, what were you wearing? What difference does it make?" Right? So that's how trafficking happens. Then she gets in the car and she didn't like that, and she says, "I don't want to do that anymore." He says, "Well, I can pick up your little sister." And then she gets turned out onto Tropicana, and an average quota could be $2,500 a night. Imagine how much walking and engaging and high-risk behavior you have to do for a $50 a night interaction. So if your quota is $2,500 before you can go home to get some water or food or get off your feet because you're wearing some shoes that are not comfortable, that is the world of trafficking. That's it right there. Would you agree?
Is my microphone turned off? Let me borrow yours for a second. Yeah. So the interesting thing is, if you think that story is far-fetched, over at Metro, year to date, we have already arrested hundreds of pimps. And exactly what she said is, these undercover investigations, this is how we start. We post a picture on social media, and we just wait for the DMs to come in. "Hey, you look cute. Oh, do you want to meet up at the mall?" Not my picture. No, they wouldn't come for me. Yeah, not my picture. And the DMs come in, and this is how many of these undercover operations happen. So if it's happened to us on a police department, and we just wait, and the messages come in, "Hey, not doing much. We'll meet you at the mall," and we go we take our undercover, usually a female officer that's younger, and go out, and then the pimp meets us and tells us exactly how much money we're going to make, what we're going to do, what we have to do for that money, that he takes us shopping, takes us out to dinner. Well, not me, I don't go out to dinner, but the undercover. And then by the end of the night, he's laid the entire game, the entire process on the line. And ladies and gentlemen, hundreds of arrests. It's not like we're waiting around for business. What I'm saying is this is happening continually. So it's not some anomaly. So
Yeah, unfortunately, the story is real, right? We see it. And an 11-year-old, yes, we at St. Jude's, we got called for that 11-year-old. And you're like, well, what is it that we're supposed to do? Some of the challenges, I'll wrap in just a second. Some of the challenges is what Judge Voice said, is that still to date, there are little to no resources. So where those children go is still the juvenile detention facility. Now, all of us know that is not the right place for a victim. Not the buyer of the sex got arrested, not the trafficker. They are the problem, right? This is a supply and demand issue. The victim, the actual victim, gets put in the back of a cop car, and even if she's in pain and afraid, she doesn't want to go to detention, and she's also not making her quota while she's sitting in the back of that cop car, and she's worried about that. So what we know is that it's sending all the wrong message about who's at fault. And these young victims have been told over and over again, probably through their whole lives, that something's wrong with them, and this is just the way it is. And so what we know is that it takes courage to stand with this population. It takes courage to say, we're going to help each child one at a time. And it also takes courage to say our system is not where it needs to be, right? So there's a lot of resources that we need in this community. At St. Jude's Ranch for Children, we are proud to say that we're willing to stand with this population and create a version, yes, finally, what Judge Voigt talked about in 2005. It's 2021. We are finally coming upon the opportunity that St. Jude's Ranch for Children is building the Healing Center, the first of its kind residential program for child victims of sex trafficking. It will be a place of restoration, a place of hope, a place of joy, because these young people are incredibly resilient. They're talented and beautiful and have dreams and goals. If we can just help them shed away the trauma and realize that what's happened to them does not define them, it is not their fault, but they have a choice about how to live their tomorrow. And so that's really what our goal is all about. I'll leave you with a couple things. Ways that you can get involved, lots of comments already. You can become a foster parent. If you have some extra time and you have an extra bedroom, you can become a foster parent that helps maybe not a sex trafficking victim at 15. Maybe it's the 7-year-old who's already brokenhearted, that's already thinking, this world, I must not be good enough. Right? So you could be a foster parent. So you can call, St. Jude's, there's lots of other organizations. We'd be happy to talk to you about becoming a foster parent. You can volunteer. Again, as the lieutenant said, volunteering can help you. You will learn so much. You can also help, of course, impact the life of a young person. And on the form that I left you, I'm so proud of myself. I learned how to do QR codes. So there's 2, and now you know how to use QR codes because, COVID taught us how to go to a restaurant and scan a QR code. But there's 2 QR codes on this piece of paper if you didn't grab one on the way out. The first one is to St. Jude's Ranch for Children. If you've never been to our campus, please call me. We have a 40-acre campus in Boulder City. I promise you, if you've driven to Hoover Dam, Lake Mead, or Arizona, you've driven right by us. We have a beautiful campus, a chapel, a thrift store. There's all kinds of cool stuff there. It is a home. It is the village to up to 60 children that are victims of abuse and neglect currently. We have a pregnant parenting teen home. We have all kinds of specialty services. Then, as part of our 40 acres, on the furthest part of our campus will be the Healing Center. And the second QR code is to the Healing Center. And if you go on our website, there's a virtual tour that you can actually take. It's a gorgeous place of healing and gardens and a tortoise habitat and an on-site school, 6 homes. It will be home for 63 abused and neglected and child victims of trafficking, the first emergency shelter beds, so that at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, these young people can bypass going to detention so they can come to the Healing Center. And the last thing I'll offer is that our prosecution rates are pretty low. And there's a research study, actually there was an article in the Washington Post just about a month ago. And if you haven't seen it, research Las Vegas 15-year-old arrested sex trafficking in the Washington Post. It's a very in-depth story. It's hard to read because it highlights where our system is flawed. But in there, it talks about research that Arizona State University did about 922 victims that have been identified, child victims, over the last 8 years. In Clark County, Metro did a great job of giving unprecedented access to child victims. And what we recognize is that these young people have an incredible amount of violence in their lives. They only have 40% of that 922 kids had a missing persons report filed on them. So when you think about how is that possible that children are being sold on our streets, are running away from home, families don't know where they're at, and only 40% of them had a missing persons report filed on them. Now, maybe not everyone needed one. Anyways, long and short of it is we recognize that it is time for this community to not only have an awareness, but yes, to support through fundraising, and we are proud that we will be breaking ground on the Healing Center January 2022, so just in a couple months. We are still actively fundraising, so when you look on that QR code on our website, for as low as $100, every single one of you can be a founding champion of the Healing Center. Yes, we are proud that Caesars Entertainment just wrote us $1 million check from parking fees. So when you park at any of the 9 properties that Caesars owns and you hate paying for that parking, I agree with you. But now, feel really good about it because they just committed $1 million to the Healing Center. So we appreciate the big donors, but for as low as $100, every single one of us can be part of the change. And so I challenge you, as as Kat said, is what will you do with this information? Right? This is heavy. You're going to have to digest this a little bit. But, whether you, need to think about it, pray on it, let it sit a little bit. But the challenge really is what will you do with this information? There are children waiting for your help in this community today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vela. I've only been working on this for 15 months, and of course, the panelists here have much more experience than I do. But one of the things I learned is that when we use the statistic of 110, that's just, as they were saying, tip of the iceberg. We have, 500,000 probably children under 15 in this community. We have, 2 million people? 110? There's more than that, but it's a silent crime. We don't know about it because even though they do pick up some on Tropicana, a lot of this happens in private homes, some of the flea bag motels we have here in town, and the people, the consumers, also come from all demographics. They can be a minister, they can be a CEO of a company, they can be a plumber, they can be one of the floor supervisors in a casino. They can be your next door neighbor. They could even be your husband. They could be somebody in your family. They could be a teacher. That's what makes this whole thing so scary, at least from my point of view. And it should be scary from your point of view as adults, that our children are being exploited primarily by men who are looking for, I guess, some type of sexual outlet, and they are not going to stop. It's like smoking cigarettes or an alcoholic. It's going to continue. And so, as the panelists were talking, we need to educate the community not only about these situations, but also educate parents as well as children what to do if they are in these type of situations. I'm going to come down here now and go to the audience and see if you have some questions for our panelists.
Hi, Judge. Question for you. The law you said that didn't get any money, is that a new law that just got passed?
It was this last session.
So how much money was it for that it didn't get?
Well, they didn't.
So the
legislation works.
So the $713 million that they got and they don't know what to do with, there's no way to go after that, or is there people that we could write to start a campaign?
Well, my suggestion was that there is the statutory framework to actually establish and open the reception centers, okay? The receiving centers. I want to call it reception center. Receiving center. I didn't pick the name. Someone else did.
The Army. It's a reception center in the Army.
That's what it is, in the Army. It's my Army stuff going on. And so it was passed, but in order to get it passed, without having to go through the other committees, the money committees, you get the legislation created, statutory scheme, because it's almost built like a mental health. So like Legal 2000, you've heard of those things before, right? And you go in, and you get civil commitment because you're mentally ill, endanger yourself or others. It was kind of modeled after that same criteria, building in the due process and everything else, and the review and everything else that needs to be there statutorily. And so that was created. So the framework's there. They're supposed to revisit it the next session.
How many,
So
how
there
many
are,
kids
during
later?
the interim, from an here to educate here, there are certain committees that meet at the state level. There's the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Joint Standing Committee in the legislature. They meet 4 times a year during the off season. There's other folks. There's public comment that can be done at various other legislative meetings before the session even starts. But my point was, we have the framework for the closest we can get to that goal we've been searching for 15 years, right? It needs to get funded. And things get funded because us in the community make it a priority. And we make that a priority with those folks that control the funding sources. And it needs to be heard by these folks. I've sit through all these kind of various commissions and committees ad nauseum over the last couple of decades. They do pay attention. When you have a microphone at public comment and you got 20 people standing there for their 2.5 minute, whatever the time they give you, that's impressive. Because I've been at the other end, sitting and watching that come through. It gets attention. And I don't think enough of that from the community has made it to those folks that need to hear it. But it's there, ready to be funded. We were just talking briefly before we started about, it would be nice to actually co-locate one of the first receiving centers there. Because they got the framework and the breaking ground. So, but my point is, that's where, amongst all the other things you can do to help this population and to make a real difference in these children's lives, your voices can be heard to those folks that can make those things happen.
I'll offer, county commissioners have a tremendous amount of access to funding and to setting a priority for our local community. And so wherever you live, you have a Clark County commissioner, and you can send them a message and talk to them about, this was passed in the last legislative session. I would really like to advocate for support for receiving center. So anyways, the Clark County commissioners, I think, is a really great place to go and have conversations with them.
Other questions? Okay. Yeah.
I understand that the Nevadans for the Common Good is involved. I don't know to what extent, and I don't know exactly what's being accomplished, but maybe you could share.
Yes, thank you. I am aware of Nevadans for Common Good, and we've talked quite a bit, so they've been active in looking for some pathways to support the Healing Center, and I know that they've been working on calling attention to trafficking as an area of focus as well.
Hi, my name is Cherie Williams, and I'm a member of the Mesquite Club. If you're not familiar with the Mesquite Club, it's the oldest community service organization in Las Vegas. It was founded in 1911. I'm also the state president for GFWC, which is the General Federation of Women's Clubs. When I was president of the Mesquite Club 2016 to 2018, we supported the Embracing Project. And we were able to give them $13,000 to support their programs. But GFWC, the General Federation of Women's Clubs, signature program is to education about domestic violence, sex trafficking, and things such as that. And my passion is we need to help these young people understand that they can survive and thrive. And as you said, this does not define them. You know, I have not been trafficked, but when I was younger, I was sexually abused. But I'm here now, and I'm able to reach back and bring some of these ladies forward. And this is what, you know, the community needs to understand, that these are trauma victims. And you just can't come in and volunteer and say, hi, I'm here to help you. You have to learn how to deal with these. They're trauma victims, but we can. You know, sometimes it just entails just sitting with them. Am I correct? You know, but go ahead.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, the intervention, the best intervention is relationship. It's all relationship based, right? It's showing up. It's sitting there quietly. It's helping them. You know, it's validating that this is tough, right? It's all those things. So the best intervention is a relationship.
Oh, it's so incredible. It's the backbone of any chance of getting through to and success with a child is that relationship. Just like you were saying about making comments about me as the judge. No, I have kids and kids that suffer from trauma, not necessarily sex trafficking, but trauma also. I get a lot of those, a lot of kids, right? A lot of trauma. And that relationship and establishing that is so very important. And for the other folks in the room, I'm talking to the guys out there, I learned this early on. When we first started, we didn't know what we were doing. There was no literature out there. There was no one doing anything across the United States except for just a couple little organizations. I went to my first conference in 2005 in Dallas. 12 people showed up. It was a national conference. Obviously, that's changed, right? But my point being is that getting those kids, for the guys, my thought was, we need strong female role models for these girls. Probation officers, right? So that was my first thought. And it became clear after about 6-8 months of doing it, like going, no, actually some of my strong male ones are so important, because I can't tell you the number of not saying girls, because it is what it is, have come to me and said, you know what, Judge, you're the only one, you didn't want anything from me. You just wanted me to be okay. And I was the first male figure in that kid's life that just didn't want anything from this child, except for them to be safe. It's all. And that goes so far. I remember one of our young ladies, it was a public record, AJ, and that's the name, that's the initials. I wrote her a letter to support her scholarship to go to the University of Alabama after the fact, all right, because she reached out to me. And I was so honored to do that for her, for example, right? And that relationship is so crucial. It can be anyone. You know, as long as you can get through to that kid and say, listen, we care about you, and you are worth every ounce of our energy to help you. It's so important.
Can I speak to that as well?
Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
So what you said is spot on. And that's, I mean, I mentioned the dad crew earlier, which is like, it's such a funny, like it makes us laugh when we talk about it, like the dad crew. But the reality is we came up with that because one of the teen girls in our program was jokingly calling me and several other staff members dad. She was like, hey, dad, and we're like, hey, okay. And then when it was like funny, she made a whole chart and started giving us stars when we would do dad-like things. And we asked her, like, why do you call us dad? And she said, well, I don't have a dad. Like, it was just so, there was no hesitation, it was just it's her life situation, you know? And so relationship building, one of the most incredible stories that I've seen out of the Purchase Not for Sale program was we had a teen girl who was meeting with her mentor once a week and really needed a place to live. And we have a program in the Purchase program called Reclaimed Homes, and it's where we partner with the Department of Family Services to train licensed foster families on trauma care and trafficking so that they are a more equipped foster home for these girls. The downside is we launched it about 10 days before the pandemic. So that made it very difficult to recruit. But this mentor built such a strong relationship with this girl. Her husband was able to walk with her as well, and they ended up going through the licensing process, going through the reclaimed home trainings. We wrapped her foster parents with support, and we wrapped the teen girl with support, and she ended up moving in with them 2 days before Christmas, and she's still with them now. And that's because they had a relationship, because fostering is really hard. So when Dr. Christina said, like, be a foster parent, you can't advocate for children who are being trafficked and not also have a heart for those experiencing homelessness or foster care or a drug addiction. It's all connected. And we oftentimes try and pull them apart and just label them as different problems, but they tend to all be latched together. But I just, with all the talk on relationships and males getting involved too, I just felt like I should share that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for Judge Voy. Judge Voy, I'd like to thank you personally. I myself have heard numerous stories on your compassion and empathy and understanding towards the girls that we serve. I am the founder and president of Ruby's LV. I spoke with you earlier. I used to be with Annie Lobert from Hookers for Jesus. We still work very closely together. So I'd like to thank you very much for what you have displayed to these young girls as far as when somebody really cares. And it's made its way around the streets. So I wanted to thank you for that. With that being said, Judge Voy, how do we get the rest of the judges to become trauma-informed in not only, I know when they are making a ruling, they have to follow what the law says, correct? But in that, you guys carry so much power in the direction of these children's lives. What can we do as service care providers to partner more and provide more education? What is it that we need to do to make sure that the judges are more trauma informed? I've also become a fictive kin foster parent in our journey, taking in 2 children that belonged to a gal that had been severely traumatized and trafficked from the age of 14, that now has severe mental health issues and is not capable of caring for her children in a safe and secure manner. And trying to convey and get the judge and really the attorneys in the room to understand what we're dealing with and what they're facing. I find it really troubling, and at times praying and asking God, like, why couldn't we just have Judge Voy, you know? So what can we do as service care providers to make sure that that's something that happens with judges receiving more trauma-informed training?
Let me think about that and get back to you. No, what I've seen in my profession, it hasn't gone unnoticed, okay? And so we've started mandating training for judges in the family division, obviously where this comes up most often for kids. The other side I'm not sure about, but in family we've started mandatory training, trying to train the judges to be more trauma informed. I mean, we're doing it constantly. I think from the providers, I think making yourself available to the, and we can talk offline about this, but with the administrative office of the court, it's the Supreme Court, it controls all the judges in the state of Nevada. They dictate mandatory training, and they're always looking for folks to do that with, right? Not just the academic type persons coming through an hour lecture or something like that, but real folks that are in the trenches working with this population, maybe their own trauma and all that stuff, right? And getting them and being willing to volunteer and help build the other curriculum that doesn't necessarily exist right now. And also with the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges based out of Reno, Nevada, which, by the way, the state of Nevada does help supplement that budget to keep it there. It's a national organization that educates and trains judges throughout the United States, and also here in Nevada, of course. This is right down their alley. So I have some contacts that I can put you in connection with to help, and maybe you could help reach out to the other folks to help build on that training, because that's where it's really at. And again, it takes a people, one of the comments I got early on when I first started advocating for this population back in 2005 and 6, they said, well, Judge Voy his own daughter must have been trafficked or something. How can he possibly be that interested in this? And now, again, I was honest, and it floated around for a couple of years, and of course, when it finally got to me, I was like going, yeah, right, no. But it took the first 12-year-old standing in front of me early on. And I'm looking at this child going, what the? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot where I'm at here. Normally things shake when I go in the house of worship, but so far the building looks like it's standing. It really is. I mean, it's and that got my attention like that. And and again, it goes to educating and picking the right folks amongst the judges you can pick from that have an interest and maybe a passion for that too, right? Because everyone's different, But let's talk offline about that, because I can plug you into a couple of real good sources of the AOC and with the National Council to help with us. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'd like to just make one comment here. They were talking here at the end about relationships. Let's flip that. What type of relationships do you have as parents with your children, grandchildren, and other children that you come in contact with? Maybe if those relationships were improved or higher quality, maybe the panelists here maybe would not have as much concern as they have. So as a community, we are responsible to take care of our kids. Whether or not we have children, doesn't matter. Or whether or not our children have grown up and have left the home, doesn't matter. We as adults need to protect our vulnerable population, our children, who might get involved in this activity. And we need to protect them. We need to educate them. And we need to educate the community as well. I want to thank Lieutenant William Matchko from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Dr. Christina Vela, who's the CEO of St. Jude's Ranch for Children, Judge William Voy, thank you, and Kat Call from Hub, or Hope Church. When you leave the sanctuary, there is a handout there. This is a card that has red flags and warning signs your child is being trafficked, how to keep your child safe on social media, and then 10 top ways to protect your child from becoming a sex trafficking victim. We also have some sign-up sheets if you're interested in joining our grassroots movement. Fill that out. And then also we are looking for funds too to continue our campaign. And if you would like to donate, we would appreciate this. Thank you very much. I think
Can
Dr. Vela?
Can I say one quick thing, please? I won't be able to sleep tonight if I didn't say this. So sorry. One of the other really important parts about combating trafficking is young men. Because they don't generally grow up and think like, I want to be a trafficker when I grow up. That I want to be a pimp when I grow up, right? Other than the glamorization. Young men need mentors, right? If they are in a single home or they have a father who's, got stuff, it doesn't matter, whatever the circumstances, is how do we help our young men avoid the path of recognizing that, there are better things for them to do with their lives than to sell human bodies, right? To sell girls. And so think about, even if you leave here today and think, I don't know about that trafficking stuff and I don't want to get involved, or I'm not sure where I fit in, just mentoring young men. Yes. Just literally helping young men, going and helping with literacy rates. It's young people that are part of the juvenile justice system, right? Young boys that are, have misdemeanor offense. I mean, there's so many ways and pathways that we can change the trajectory of young people's lives. And so this work is not just about supporting the victims, it's preventing young people for not becoming victims, but also not becoming the perpetrator, right? How do we end that cycle? So I really needed to say that, sorry. So thank you.
Again, thank you very much. The panelists will be around for a little bit if you have other questions that you would like to talk about. Thank you very much for coming out and joining us in this informative forum.
Thank you.